Yes.
About the shaken baby, I understand the 1,100 and 11,000. I just have a hypothetical question, and I don't think we do this. What about hurling a baby against the wall? I mean, can you get to that?
Oh yes. Oh yes. You can create a subdural from a fall this high onto a hard floor. Absolutely.
I attended a lecture of a clinical psychologist who spoke about children as babies who had these kind of accidents, who had problems later on in life. Not from shaken baby, but from accidents. They had, I was curious what the force was.
Yeah, absolutely. The key there, though, is you've got a chronic problem, an acute problem, both inside the head as well as on the outside. So when you show up at the emergency room, there's the bruise on the outside, which no doubt led to the CT scan produced or confirmed subdural. Scott?
Based on your idea that childbirth would cause these subdural hematomas, does this suggest that cesarean births would be free of this? And then is there a correlation? Do you find no shaken baby syndrome for cesarean birth?
No, this is a good question. In case you couldn't hear, the question is relative to cesarean birth, wouldn't you expect to see a reduction? So far, no study has chased that idea. It should be, however, there's a contamination in the data in that often cesareans are emergencies. Something is already going wrong, could very well be the baby is stuck during the labor process. So what I would want to do as a scientist is randomly assign women to the categories that you're going to get a cesarean, you're not. But we're not going to do that either. But it is a good question. Yeah.
So we started from Darwin, and you ended up with this particular example, which in a sense there invokes a little bit of the malice in people. So I want to ask the question: what in our evolution fostered, malice manifested in our behaviors?
Yeah, the question
versus always being good, and also, and this is kind of malice that I don't think is observed in animals, for example. Intentional killing or intentional service.
Okay. First, the question is why malice in the human? And I wanted to make sure that you got the connection between Darwin, his celebration today. It's the encephalization. It's the human brain has gotten so big that the applied item that I'm talking about today is the shaken baby syndrome. But again, it's due to natural selection and sexual selection. There's a strong argument that our brains got bigger actually because of sexual selection, but I'm not going to go into that today. Your claim was that malice is associated with humans almost exclusively, I think I heard you say, and I would quarrel with that. And we see brutal activity between and amongst animals, even within species. Now, let me frame your question the opposite way. Why malice in the human? You should reframe it the opposite way. Why altruism? If you really look at survival, it's at the end of the day, it's about me getting, resources and a mate. If I fail those two tests for too long, I'm out of the gene pool, and my tendencies, to the degree I would have contributed, are out of the gene pool. We are all survivors. We are all ancestors, follow-ons to those who had enough malice to make darn sure they got the resources and the mates that they needed. So the question is, why altruism? And the answer that has been provided for that is called genetic kin theory. And it has been shown quantitatively that the closer you are in terms of your being a relative, the more likely you are to be altruistic, and that is to help your neighbor. It flows beyond family as well, obviously. I mean, there are many stories of men throwing themselves on grenades and so forth. And, it's like Boyle's Law. We know pressure, volume, temperature. We can predict one of those given the other two, but that doesn't mean we know where every molecule is going to be, right? So this is a case like that. Yes?
Just going back to what you said about pregnancy sickness, it's interesting that you mentioned that really only humans experience that, and you suggested a possibility that it was to regurgitate toxins in the environment from berries and that kind of thing. Why would human fetuses be particularly vulnerable to that type of toxin compared to, say, other apes? Do you have any explanation for that?
Well, keep in mind that we are very busy preparing foods, and a large part of eating vegetables is diminishing the effects of what are called secondary compounds. So plants like to be plants, but they also like to coat themselves with compounds that deter animals from eating them. And so our process of having domesticated plants was to get rid of that or to cook it away. So I suspect that at the intersection of synthetically produced foods, even those millions of years ago, that there's an interaction. I've not done away with your question. I think it's a very good question, and it's one well worth thinking about.
Yes, sir.
Would you advocate routine scanning of all infants for
You got it.
birth injury?
You got it. The question was, should we advocate scanning all infants at birth? And the answer is absolutely yes, but who's going to pay for it? You know, we're in a third-party system of medicine here, and I'm not here to talk about that today, but it's problematic. And adding another item, even though we know that 25 to 50% have some form of intracranial bleeding, the other argument is, yeah, 99.99% of that just goes away. Why worry about it? So, but I still think if we could get the technology where we needed it to at least screen, if not diagnose, that we ought to be screening.
I want to make 2 points of clarification. Yeah, I had a friend who dropped their baby. They called it shaken baby syndrome at the hospital, but they in fact dropped the baby. So yes, that is possible. And on the British nanny case, that was actually a gambit, sort of an inverse plea bargain. So no, they didn't like go after. Well, yeah, the jury and the judge didn't go after the British nanny. On the defense, on her defense, the defense team set up a gambit. The prosecutor wanted second-degree murder. So the gambit was, no, you either convict my client of first-degree murder or you let her go. The lawyer figured, okay, well then they'll let her go. But no, the jury said, no, we want to get you on something, so we're going to get you on first-degree murder.
So it was first degree?
It was second degree.
Second.
Oh, it was manslaughter. Yeah, choose between.
Second degree.
Yeah, the prosecutor wanted second degree or,
So
or manslaughter. Basically,
So there
you know
was
the
a
gambit.
gambit,
So it was a yeah.
Yeah, got it. Good. Other question? Yes.
Among that 25 to 50% of all neonates being born with some form of intracranial bleed, how many of, what percentage in that amount are subject to rebleed?
I don't know the answer. The question is, of the 25 to 50% of neonates with bleeding, intracranial bleeding, what percentage actually shows rebleed? I don't know the answer to that question. I know that my partner, Dr. Yasinski, Ron Yasinski, could give you an estimate, but I don't know the answer. Other questions?
Yes, sir.
Actually, just one more point. I would argue that it would be actually pretty easy to design a study in which to compare cesarean births to natural vaginal delivery, just because there are so many scheduled cesareans, particularly if you have the first birth that is a cesarean, and a vaginal birth after cesarean is not possible. Oftentimes they are scheduled. So something like that is very, very feasible.
I agree with you. I don't disagree whatsoever. The only problem is, to be purely scientific, you need to be purely random. And there are reasons that people get scheduled for cesareans. They may have problematic parturition in the past or other medical reasons. So I agree, and you could probably do a meta-analysis to squeeze those problems out, and you're still going to get your main effect. So in all, I agree. Yeah.